April 7th, 1942. Over the turquoise waters of the Bismarck Sea, 4 dots appeared on the horizon, silver specks glinting in the late morning sun. Through binoculars aboard the Japanese destroyer Arashio, Lieutenant Commander Takeo Okazaki squinted. He smirked. "American bombers," he muttered to his first officer. "Big ones." A ripple of laughter spread across the deck. The men had heard stories of this new flying fortress, a 4-engine monstrosity the Americans claimed was invincible. Yet here it was, lumbering in formation, moving so slowly it seemed almost to hang in the air. "Too big," one officer joked. "Easier to hit."
The ship's 25mm anti-aircraft guns began to rotate, tracking the specks. The gunners grinned. Targets this large didn't come often. They'd make quick work of them. Then the bombers came closer. Through the shimmering heat, their outlines sharpened. Boeing B-17Es, heavy bombers of the U.S. Army Air Forces. Their wings stretched nearly 100 feet across, each carrying machine guns like porcupine quills, 12 in total. But from below, that didn't matter. They were flying low, dangerously slow, and the Japanese gunners could already feel victory. The first shells arced upward. Black puffs of flak burst near the lead bomber. The formation wobbled, but held. Then another burst, closer. "Hit!" someone shouted. Except it wasn't. The bomber steadied itself, one engine coughing smoke, and kept coming, unwavering, straight toward the convoy. Then the sky opened. Each B-17 released its payload in perfect sync, a carpet of 500-pound bombs falling in slow, terrifying silence. For a heartbeat, nothing moved. Then the ocean erupted. Columns of water, oil, and fire shot skyward. The Arashia rocked violently. Okazaki was thrown to the deck, his ears ringing. The mocking laughter vanished, replaced by chaos. Alarms, screams, smoke. When the smoke cleared, 2 transports were gone. Another was listing, aflame. The giant targets had vanished into the clouds, climbing toward the sun, already out of reach. That day, the Japanese Navy learned something they hadn't expected. The flying fortress wasn't designed to dodge fire. It was designed to survive it. But they still didn't believe it. Not yet. In Tokyo's military briefings, officers dismissed the attack as luck. Too slow, they said. Too heavy. Once our fighters engage, they'll burn. They hadn't seen what those bombers could do together when hundreds of them filled the sky in precise formation, overlapping fields of fire, every machine gun protecting the one beside it. That moment was coming, and when it arrived, the laughter would stop for good. August 17th, 1942. 30,000 feet above Rouen, France, thin air, freezing cold, and the sound of engines pounding like a heartbeat across the clouds. Major Paul Tibbets gripped the control yoke of his B-17 butcher shop as vapor trails stretched behind his formation. 12 flying fortresses in tight box formation, sunlight gleaming off their silver fuselages. Below them, their first mission over Nazi-occupied Europe. No fighter escort, just courage, engineering, and a promise. This aircraft can take punishment and still bring its crew home. Tibbets knew those words were more than propaganda. They were hope wrapped in aluminum. As they crossed the coastline, German radar stations lit up like Christmas trees. Within minutes, the Luftwaffe was airborne. "Bandits, 12 o'clock high!" The radio came alive. Messerschmitt Bf-109s dove from above, screaming out of the sun. The sky erupted, tracer rounds streaking past like fiery needles, engines roaring, metal tearing. Inside the lead fortress, the temperature was 20 degrees below zero. The waist gunners' fingers froze to their triggers, but they didn't stop firing. Twin .50 caliber Brownings spat fire from every direction, creating a dome of lead around the formation. The Germans couldn't believe what they saw. Every time they made a pass, they were met with a wall of bullets. The formation didn't scatter. It moved as one, slow and methodical, like a fortress in motion. A Luftwaffe ace, Oberleutnant Hans Beiswanger, later described it. It was like attacking a flying fortress city. Every gunner protected the other. You could not find a blind spot. You could only die trying. Bomb bay doors opened. Over Rouen, bombs fell in perfect sequence. Bridges, factories, rail yards obliterated in seconds. Tibbets turned his plane home. One engine gone, another leaking fuel, holes everywhere, but still flying. Hours later, when they landed in England, ground crews counted more than 200 bullet holes in butcher shop. Not a single crewman was lost. That mission proved what the B-17 was meant to be. Not just a bomber, but a symbol of defiance. Word spread fast, across Europe, across the Pacific. And in Tokyo, those same Japanese commanders who had mocked the giant target began to hear rumors. Rumors of massive formations that could fly through storms of flak. Rumors of bombers that shrugged off fire and kept coming. Rumors of American machines that didn't die easily. But rumors are easy to dismiss until they appear on your radar. And soon, Japanese observers on the island of Rabaul would look up and see the impossible filling their skies. October 12, 1943, Rabaul, New Britain. The tropical air shimmered with heat and the stench of diesel fuel. Below, one of Japan's most vital strongholds hummed with confidence. Nearly 100 ships filled the harbor, cruisers, destroyers, transports. Overhead, Zeros patrolled lazily, their pilots joking over the radio. To them, Rabaul was untouchable, a fortress of their own. At 9:38 a.m., a radar operator on the hill north of the harbor frowned. His screen flickered, faint blips, then more, until the line of dots became a solid wall. "Multiple contacts, hundreds," he muttered, blinking. The officer beside him laughed. Probably a glitch. It wasn't. Moments later, the horizon began to shine. Dozens of silver specks appeared, glinting against the blue. Then hundreds. The sunlight caught their wings and turned the morning sky into a sheet of polished metal. The flying fortresses had arrived. 124 B-17s, escorted by squadrons of P-38 Lightnings, flying in precise mathematical formation. From the ground, it looked like an iron cloud rolling toward Rabaul, a storm made by men. "Impossible," one Japanese airman whispered. "They're too high." The anti-aircraft batteries opened fire. Black bursts peppered the sky, but the bombers didn't waver. They flew steady, mechanical, like a heartbeat. At 10:03 a.m., the lead navigator called out the words every fortress crewman lived for. "Bomb bay doors open." A second later, the sky began to rain steel. From 5 miles up, 500-pound bombs fell in waves, whistling through the air. Within moments, the harbor erupted, a volcano of fire, smoke, and water. Ships vanished in boiling geysers. Oil tanks ignited, rolling black clouds across the island. The Japanese airfield was next. Rows of Zero fighters exploded like matchsticks. Pilots sprinted for cover, their disbelief drowned out by the roar of detonations. Through the smoke, the flying fortresses turned in perfect unison, massive, slow, deliberate. From the ground, it looked like they were moving in defiance of nature itself. A young officer, Lieutenant Kiyoshi Tanaka, watched through binoculars as one B-17 took a direct flak hit. A fireball engulfed the right wing, but the bomber didn't fall. It limped onward, trailing smoke, its guns still firing. Tanaka lowered his binoculars and whispered, almost reverently, "Fortress, yes, they named it well."
By 10:30 a.m., Rabaul was unrecognizable. The once proud base was a landscape of ruin. Ships capsized, hangars flattened, smoke curling thousands of feet into the air. The surviving bombers turned east, engines droning as they disappeared into the clouds. The laughter that once followed their name had turned into silence. In that silence, Japanese command understood something terrible. These machines weren't just weapons, they were a promise. A promise that America would never again fight on its knees. A promise that from this moment forward, the war would come for them from above, and the flying fortress would be its messenger. The harbor was silent now. Smoke hung low over the wreckage like a funeral shroud. The sea, once glistening with warships, was slick with oil and debris. Burnt paper drifted through the air, glowing orange as the rising sun caught the last embers of the night. Lieutenant Kiyoshi Tanaka stood on the shattered pier, his uniform blackened with soot. Around him, sailors shoveled the remains of what had been the pride of the Imperial Navy. The cruiser Myoko still smoldered nearby, her bow torn open. The attack had lasted only minutes. The consequences would last forever. Tanaka had seen hundreds of bombing raids in China and the Philippines, but nothing like this. The B-17s hadn't come in desperate bursts. They'd come as a system. Cold, mechanical, unstoppable. He watched a group of engineers recover twisted shrapnel from the beach, fragments of American bomb casings stamped Seattle, USA. It hit him then. Every piece of metal, every bolt and rivet had come from a nation half a world away, and yet it had arrived here with devastating precision. Hours later, in an underground conference room beneath Rabaul's headquarters, senior officers gathered in silence. General Hitoshi Imamura slammed his hand on the table. "How did we let this happen?" he barked. No one answered. A staff officer finally spoke. They came from Port Moresby, 1,000 kilometers, without fighter escort. That was impossible, or at least it had been yesterday. For months, Japanese intelligence had laughed at reports of flying fortresses crossing oceans, claiming they were too heavy, too slow, too vulnerable. But those words, too slow, now echoed hollow in the smoke-filled air. Imamura leaned forward, his face gray. "If they can reach Rabaul," he said quietly, "they can reach anywhere." At that same moment, thousands of miles away in Brisbane, General George Kenney of the U.S. 5th Air Force read the after-action report from Rabaul. Losses? Minimal. Objective? Total success. He smiled grimly. The experiment had worked. High-altitude precision bombing, once doubted even by the Americans themselves, had just proven its worth in fire and steel. Back at Rabaul, the mood was different. Tanaka looked up at the distant sky, the same sky that had turned silver the day before. He imagined those bombers returning, not hundreds, but thousands. He could almost hear them already, the slow, rhythmic thunder of engines over the horizon. For the first time since the war